One. Oops.
Welcome you to the Tuesday, June 10th, 2025 regular meeting of the Palm Springs Planning Commission. Can we have a roll call, please? Oh, before we do roll call, we have a new commission member, a new alternate member, Megan Hernandez. We're so thrilled to have her. And Megan, do you want to take a moment and just introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Megan Hernandez, Hernandez being my married last name. I come from a community background. I was on the board of 1PS and on the board of the Desert Highland Gateway Estates Community Action Association. I'm also a disabled veteran, and I work for myself as an entrepreneur, so I'm happy to be here with you all. This is really exciting, and I'm just excited to learn some new things that I don't already know.
I met Megan on the General Plan Steering Committee, for which she was a member along with myself, and I think everybody on that committee really enjoyed working with you for the time that we got to, so we're really thrilled to have you here.
Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate it.
Okay, now can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Wormick,
Present.
Vice Chair Alayan,
Present.
Commissioner Baker,
Here.
Commissioner Miller,
Present.
Commissioner Murphy,
Present.
Commissioner Rotman,
Here.
Commissioner Morale,
Present.
and alternate Megan Hernandez.
Present.
Can we have a report on the posting of the agenda, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, the agenda was available for public access at the City Hall exterior bulletin board and online in accordance with the city's policies and procedures by 9 p.m. on Thursday, June 5th, 2025.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. The next is the public comment period. And am I correct that we have one of these items is a public hearing item and the other is not?
That's correct. We have a number of members online and I believe some in the audience as well. So item 4A is not a public hearing item. So typically we would take comments at this time, but at your discretion, Madam Chair, you can choose to also take them during the item.
I would like to take, because there may be public comment, I'd like to take it after the staff report and before the item is heard by the, or before the committee. This time is set aside for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on consent calendar and other agenda items and items that are within our subject matter jurisdiction. Note that we can't take any action on an item that is not on the agenda. Speakers will get three minutes. Testimony may be offered at this time or at the time of the hearing. But if you are here on public hearing item A, which is the request for an extension of time, or on the pickleball item, both of those items you can testify prior to or after staff report and prior to it coming to the board. So are there any members of the public who wish to testify at this time?
So I have Jim Gazen for 4A. Would you like to speak now or at the time that the item is heard? You would like to speak now? Okay. So Jim Gazen? Gazan. Apologies.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your time and for the work that you do on behalf of the city. My name is Jim Gazan, and I'm a Palm Springs resident, and I'm here to express my strong support for the proposed pickleball club project off of Ramon Road. This is a project that, in my view, checks all the right boxes. It's free of controversy, thoughtfully planned, and represents the kind of community-minded development that Palm Springs can be proud of. Not only will it activate a long vacant piece of property, but it will also enhance our recreational offerings here in the city, promote health, wellness, and social connection. I'd also like to highlight that the owners and operators are local residents. They're members of our community. They're investing their own money. That matters. I encourage the city to do what it can to support this project and to move it forward efficiently, ideally so we can help fill the gap during the renovation period and the closure of Demuth Park Courts. I thank you for your time. Also, I'd like to note, I live in the neighborhood near where the storage facility is being proposed. I know that a lot of our neighbors were supportive of that. So if this is about just extending an extension for that planning, again, it's another vacant lot that's been vacant always, and we would love to see something there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak at this time, possibly on Zoom?
We have no online speakers wishing to speak at this time.
Thank you. With that, the public hearing portion of this meeting is closed. The first item we have is the consent calendar, and that's the approval of the minutes of April 22nd, 2025. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I motion to accept. Second.
Can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Chair Warmick,
Yes.
Vice Chair Alayan,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Rotman.
Yes.
Commissioner Morale.
Yes.
One more. But and all she should say is, oh, she's not voting, correct. Sorry. Okay. The second item, this passes unanimously. The second item on our agenda is a request by MSA Consulting, Inc. on behalf of Farrell Drive, Palm Springs, LLC, for approval of a 2-year extension of time application for an approved major architectural review application and a major development permit application case 3.4313 MJA for the construction of a 64,092 square foot self-storage facility on a 4.2 acre undeveloped parcel located at 900 North Farrell Drive. Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. The project in front of you tonight is an extension of time request for the Farrell Drive PS self-storage facility. This project was originally entitled under case number 3.4313, major development permit and a major architectural review applications. The effective date of this entitlement approval is August 2nd, 2022, which was due to expire on August 2nd, 2024. The applicant timely filed an extension of application for this project, and application was deemed complete on April 23rd, 2025. The applicant is requesting a 2-year extension of time under this application. The project site is a 4.2 acre vacant site, and the proposed site design includes 4 detached buildings, which range from 5,500 to 41,000 square feet, along with a new landscape and a parking. The site is accessible from a Research Drive. And here are the renderings of our approved project. The proposed construction is a single story at a maximum height of 21 feet at the main building. And the proposed drive-up storage units has a proposed height of 13 feet and 8 inches. And a similar architectural treatment was proposed for the entire site. The major development permit application for this project was approved by the Planning Commission on April 22nd, 2022. The Architecture Review Committee approved a major architecture review application on July 18th, 2022, and the applicant filed an extension of time application on April 28th, more than 60 days before the entitlement expiration date. The extension of time application was deemed complete on April 23rd of this year. So far, the applicant has completed a parcel merger for the proposed project. And after the entitlement was approved by the Architecture Review Committee, the applicant applied for a building and safety plan check. And within 6 months, the plan check was approved by all city departments except for engineering services. This permit was expired in 2023, and should the applicant decide to continue this project, the applicant will be required to apply for a building permit. Under the zoning code, an extension of the time application up to 24 months may be granted by the Planning Commission. And in reviewing the extension of the time application, the Planning Commission must make specific findings that are stated in the zoning code. The one of which states that the financial inability and market conditions are not considered valid reasons to justify an extension of time. In the submitted justification letter, the applicant explains that the project was delayed due to unforeseen partnership issues and a difficulty finding a qualified buyer who is willing to move the project forward as entitled. In reviewing this application, staff has determined that there are no changes proposed to the final approved plans, and unforeseen partnership issues and the difficulty finding a qualified buyer can be caused by multiple factors, and that the financial inability and/or market conditions cannot be identified definitively as the sole cause of the project delay. And the applicant previously demonstrated good faith efforts to exercise entitlements, and for the reason the project meets the required findings stated in the zoning code. In conclusion, staff recommends the Planning Commission to adopt the draft resolution and approve the extension of original entitlement approval by 2 years until August 2nd, 2026. This concludes the staff presentation, and the applicant is available remotely to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Are there questions of staff? Yes, Commissioner Morrell, and then Vice Chair Olea.
Yeah, it's sort of a question for staff, but also for the developer. It would seem to me that the partnership issues and the financial feasibility issues are sort of tied together. I was wondering what the explanation is about the difficulty finding a partner. And, you know, what are the chances that they're going to be able to get a partner in 2 year, you know, within the 2-year period?
I will request applicant answer the question as well as the details and update of this, the partnership and prospective buyer from the project.
Just an item of clarification before we go on. The 1 year of the 2-year period is already expired. So if we give them a 2-year extension, that extension, in my understanding, is only until August of 2026. So that we're looking at what will effectively be 1 year, although it's a 2-year extension. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Yes. Vice Chair Olayan.
This is along a similar line, and you might want the applicant to address it, but I'm curious, has the potential buyer done any due diligence with the staff? Have they met with you?
The staff personally did not receive any, the public records request or the information request for this project from the prospective buyer.
Okay, thank you. Out of curiosity, why wasn't the application deemed complete until April of this year? Was it something that the applicant hadn't done?
I will request applicant answer the questions.
Okay, well, the staff is the party that deems it complete. Why wasn't it staff deeming it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Some of the materials were insufficient, or it was missing the information. So that's the reason why the application was deemed incomplete up to then.
Thanks. One of the other things, I thought I saw it in the staff report, and by the time I got through everything and went back, I couldn't find it again. But has the applicant paid their, all of their fees for entitlements that they've received so far? Or have they paid all of their plan check fees?
Not to my knowledge.
And
They would have paid their planning entitlement fees, or we wouldn't be bringing this before you. But I think, are you asking about, because they had been into the plan check process previously, into the permitting process with building, whether they had paid all of those fees?
yes,
I think typically those fees are collected at the time the building permit is issued, and I don't believe they got to that point in the process. They got through a couple of rounds of plan check fees, and
Okay.
so they would have paid those plan check fees, but the permit fees themselves are unlikely to have been paid, given where the process kind of paused, but I think it's a question we can ask the applicant to clarify.
okay, I was, again, that speaks towards intent. And then the other thing that I'm curious about is the applicant now is proposing to sell this, and part of the reason they say in their justification letter for needing more time is that it has taken longer to find somebody who would buy this. It hasn't been appealing to somebody who wanted it as entitled. Did the applicant represent to staff or to the city from the outset that they were only processing entitlements and that they had no intention of building the project themselves? Or did they represent when they started that they were planning to build the project?
The staff did not receive any intent from the applicant for a project which is different from what was approved, or any intent to make changes to the approved plans.
I don't think it was expressed to us one way or
One way
another
or
what
the
their
other.
intentions
Okay.
were in terms of this partnership or sort of that financial relationship. So I think we were processing it as though it was going to get built by somebody,
Okay.
typically the applicant, but, you know.
Okay, those are my questions for staff. Thank you.
Commissioner Murphy, you have your light on. Are you?
Oh, well, I didn't intend to ask a question, but now that you're calling on me, I will. Can you just clarify the role of the applicant? Is the applicant the owner and developer? And one of the issues in the delay is that the applicant hasn't been able to find a buyer for the project. Is that where we are?
Yes, that is my understanding. If there's any misunderstanding on the staff part, obviously the applicant can clarify, but that is our understanding.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? I have maybe two. I was just looking at whether staff is convinced. We have to make finding number 5 and number 6 that the applicant has demonstrated convincingly and clearly that the project will be substantially underway within the extension period. Have you gotten that kind of assurance?
I think given how advanced they got into the building permitting process, from a technical perspective, we feel that they've demonstrated that they have made progress and that they are committed to the project. Now, in terms of some of the financial arguments that they've raised in here, I think that that's better suited for the applicant to speak to. It's not something that we typically are concerning ourselves with too much, because it's sort of out of the scope of what we feel staff's role in evaluating this is. We're looking at sort of the technical aspects. And so on that front, we're satisfied. In terms of this business relationship, I think that the applicant should speak to that and how prepared they are to move forward.
Okay. This matter is now, the public comment period is open. If the applicant is here, you have 10 minutes, and you have some questions before you.
So I have a Mr. Higuchi and a Mr. Chen online. I have given you both permission to speak, so you can share your time however you wish.
Great. Good evening, Madam Chair, fellow commissioners. My name is Eric Higuchi. I am the applicant along with John Chen for the project. First of all, wanted to thank staff for their time as well as for your time tonight. Much appreciated for your consideration. With respect to the questions I heard tonight, I'll try to address them. What was our original intent? We did intend to build this, which is why we proceeded forward with building plans. The capital expense of building plans is securing building permits. Secondly, with respect to unpaid fees, I do believe that refers to impact fees or various inspection fees to be paid at the time of building permit issuance. I don't believe we have an outstanding balance for any plan checks or plan check fees currently. Staff can correct me if I'm wrong on that. With respect to the extenuating circumstances requesting for the extension, not to get too into it, but we proceeded down the path of securing permit-ready plans. We did have a partnership issue where some partners decided that they did not want to move forward with construction. Frankly, I would have loved to move forward with construction, but the partners opted to not move forward with construction. Accordingly, we did attempt to seek a buyer for the project. Some of the difficulties with finding a buyer is that multiple buyers wanted to increase the density of the project. We didn't want to have to go through that with those buyers again. And so we did select a buyer that would build the project as currently designed. I apologize. I don't recall all the other questions. Happy to field any additional questions you may have or follow up on questions I may have missed.
Before we do that, we would take comments from members of the public or other people who wish to speak. Are there any? Are you speaking? Please come up. And you have 3 minutes.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Lee Chandrasena. I'm a resident of Palm Springs. I've been here since 1980. I am here to support the extension of the permits.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else on Zoom who wishes to speak?
Not in addition to the applicant team, no other speakers, Madam Chair.
Okay, then the matter is, I'm not closing the public hearing. At this point, I will take questions of the applicant or applicants. Yes, Commissioner Morell and then Commissioner Rotman, and then
Yes,
Commissioner Baker.
I had asked what the difficulties were with finding a partner, and maybe you could speak to that, and what's the likelihood that you're going to have a partner within the next year and be able to actually get the project moving. Also, if you have any information on a market for self-storage in Palm Springs, what the current vacancy rate is, and is that contributing to the problems you're having finding a buyer?
So with respect to sourcing a partner, that isn't that has not been an issue because that's not a problem we're trying to resolve right now. We're specifically selling the property to a new third-party buyer. Finding a third-party buyer that would pursue a project that, the project that we entitled that we felt was a good balance of an economically viable project and one that wasn't too impactful on the community was difficult, and that is a reason for the delay. With respect to the market for self-storage, again, this is not this extension isn't based upon market-driven issues, but I think real estate's tough anywhere, but I think a lot of people with vision are excited to have long-term real estate holdings in almost anywhere in Southern California, especially a community like Palm Springs, which is core to the Coachella Valley.
Commissioner Rotman?
Yeah, thank you. So if I'm understanding correctly, you are currently in negotiation with a new partner, and that partner is going to proceed to build this project. and you will no longer be involved with the project? Is that right?
Correct. The partner would be not the correct term, it'd be a new buyer.
Okay. And then in your statement of justification, you mentioned that the inflationary environment also was part of the reason for your difficulty proceeding within the original two-year time. Do you anticipate that inflationary environment changing in the next year? Because I don't.
Yeah, well, certainly. We're in interesting times, and I don't mean that in a good way. I wouldn't say the inflationary environment was a contributing factor because that was something we had baked in. What has been a difficult moving target are the policies of the new administration, especially related to tariffs. Those are going to be the uncertainties moving forward, in my opinion.
Okay. And then just a question for staff, just a clarification. So if we grant this extension for the development permit application, does that mean that they have to be permitted within that one-year time, or is it just that they need to renew their permit?
The permit will have to be issued.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Do they have to break ground?
I think as long as the permit is issued and they are, and it has not expired, then they're told. If the permit is issued, they don't break ground, and therefore they haven't, brain isn't working, vested the project, and then and there's no additional extension of time granted, then they would lose the project.
And how much do they have to put into vest?
I think any sort of foundational or groundwork vests it.
Okay. Other questions? Oh, Commissioner Baker, sorry.
Hi, Mr. Pingucci, it's Carl Baker speaking. Two quick questions. Number one, I'm not familiar with the storage world, but is it typical that a developer will purchase a property and then sell it to one of the major national retailers, or it's not a retailer, but a national warehouse company?
Yes, it is typical because of the perception of how difficult entitlements are and the cost of land is in Palm Springs, or not in Palm Springs, in California in general, excuse me. Certainly there is often an exit strategy where a developer would entitle a project, even with the intention like we did to build it out and sell it to an interested national party. Now, to be frank here, again, we wanted to build this, and the return on our investment from a straight sale isn't as high as I think we would have made more money selling it or moving forward with a build out of a full facility. But again, because of other extenuating circumstances, we are selling the property as is.
Okay, thank you. And a second question, is the building material primarily steel?
This is a combination of concrete tilt-up, but the interior material has a lot of steel. In particular, the roll-up doors are very costly, and those are steel.
Yeah, I'm afraid the price of that is only going in one direction at this point. Last question. Have you built any of these other facilities? What other experience have you had, in Palm Springs or other cities or states?
We recently entitled and sold a property in San Pedro in Los Angeles. We're certainly more of a boutique firm, but for example, I'm involved in multiple projects myself. We have commercial projects in Orange County and residential projects in Murrieta. Palm Desert is what I'm working on it as well.
So all over the map, and you're not just specifically building storage facilities. You have residential and commercial. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Other questions? I have one. I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Sorry, one quick question. Mr. Higuchi, is the buyer represented? Is he online with you or in the auditorium tonight, he or she?
I believe they are. It's the name of their company is USAA. I'm not sure if they are or not. I'm not present there with them.
If you are and you would like to speak or answer questions from the commission, please raise your hand online and I can allow you to speak. I just see names, so I can't see.
Okay, I was going to say, I'm not wanting to ask questions. It just kind of speaks towards level of interest and seriousness of intent.
There are a number of people on here that I can't identify.
But nobody's indicating they represent the buyer.
Not at this point.
Thank you.
My questions are, and they really go toward the finding I have to make regarding that this will be built. You say you're in negotiations with a buyer. Do you have a contract with them where?
Yes, we are in contract with the buyer.
So you are in contract. There is a firm buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And how long do you anticipate the sale to be?
I'll have to defer to my partner, John Chen. I believe it's 90 days.
It's John over here. We are in probably the third draft of our PSA with USAA. We're having our attorneys finish the draft, and they do have a 90-day due diligence period. And then from there, they can assess whether they want to move forward with this. But I believe they do have they are a legacy self-storage operator, so they do have numerous projects around the Southwest.
So you're in discussions. You're in third draft of the contract. You haven't finalized it, and they have a 90-day due diligence period to decide whether to go forward. And if they do go forward, when do you anticipate the sale to be? And are they doing anything on renewing the permit while you're in the due diligence?
Yeah, so, go ahead, Eric, sorry.
Yeah, I apologize. I misspoke. Yeah, so in 90 days, they would close, I believe. Is that correct, John?
Well, yeah, they have to do the due diligence, and then they have to review the plans as it is right now, and then if they have no objections, then they would. But usually with these due diligence, there's always going to be questions and extensions, and so we're not exactly too sure what questions they're going to have for us, but obviously it's part of the process.
Thank you. Are there any other members I think at this point, there are no other members of the public that had wanted to speak. Are there other questions before we? Yes, Commissioner Murphy.
My question is, if this deal goes through, is the deal to build out exactly what's been presented and applied for in this application? Or does the potential buyer have the ability to make another pass at the city to make changes to what's been proposed?
Right. So this is John, by the way. Currently, we don't know how their underwriting will be. We are marketing the project as it's currently drawn here. They may or may not base a lot of it, from our experience, a lot of it will come down to construction budget as well. So seeing where that come back at, they may make some modifications, and if they are making modifications, then they will obviously have to go through the same process with city staff and also with the planning commission. But I can't guarantee, can't say that they will not request any changes.
And just to clarify from the city's perspective, so if they were to, plan substantive changes to what had been entitled, it would need to come back before you and the Architectural Review Committee. So, it would have to go through the full review.
And they would have to get that and get approval within the 1-year period, or the application's dead?
It would constitute a new application, essentially.
It would be a new application.
Looked at as a new project.
Okay, well, this item is, I'm closing the public hearing unless there are more questions. Commissioner Miller, you have your light on. Are you? Okay, I see no more questions. The public hearing is closed. The matter is before the commission. And let's just sort of start with comments before we do anything else. Yes, Commissioner Morrell, then Commissioner Rotman, then Commissioner Miller.
Well, I'm curious why we would continue this when it doesn't seem like the applicant's going to be able to meet the time frame of 1 year. And what's the urgency? What's the benefit to the city of giving them this 1 year extension? It doesn't seem like there is any benefit to the city.
Commissioner Rotman.
Yeah, I would support the extension. I think given where they have, how much they've done so far and where they are potentially with negotiating a new partner, I think it's behooves us to give them the opportunity to complete that deal. And then if the new owner wants to make changes or build it as is, then, you know, I think that gives them the opportunity to do that.
Commissioner Murphy, I'm going down the line, obviously.
Okay, I agree with Commissioner Rotman on that point. In terms of enabling the current project to go forward with this potential new buyer, I have I guess a technical question maybe for staff. We're not supposed to consider financial considerations or market conditions in this decision, yet that's really what's going on. So do we have that leeway to?
It's ultimately your finding to make. I mean, I think there is also reference to extenuating circumstances, and I think the way that we were viewing this was, you know, there's a lot going on in the world that are extenuating circumstances, certainly financial adjacent. Are legitimate reasons why this project is taking longer, and I think that in combination with the fact that they were so advanced with the permitting process gave us some comfort that they were meeting the findings. Now, ultimately, that's your call to make, but that's how we viewed it.
Thank you. I'm comfortable with that.
Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, I too would support the extension. I don't see any reason why we would. It would almost be punitive to say at this point, oh, sorry, you didn't act. And, you know, that they've shown good effort. They've put tens of thousands of dollars into the plans, and there's no reason to have someone else do that again in the future. There's not a line of people waiting to develop this site, so I'd see no reason why we would hold up an extension. They've got a lot to do in the next year, so it's really on their, they got to be on the ball, but I see no reason why we would hold it up.
Commissioner Miller. Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Baker. I'm going to have Scott speak twice.
As a matter of course, they are entitled, the developer is entitled to 24 months. And again, similar to Commissioner Miller, I don't see anything precluding that from going forward.
I would offer that I have a healthy skepticism about this developer's ability to perform within the 2 years, or if backtracking, it's more like 14 months. I don't see evidence of a serious buyer if they haven't even done due diligence. That's kind of a minimum threshold. They're not under contract. There's no hard money in place. So I have healthy skepticism. That being said, this city has been very liberal with granting extensions to people who have done far less than this developer has. And the fact that they have submitted for a permit and submitted their drawings and made it through plan check is a good sign, and a sign certainly that they intended to do the project. And I don't think that we stand, that the city or the residents or the community stands to be harmed in any way if we spend another 14 months without anything happening on the property. So I'm willing to suspend my skepticism and give them a chance and see if they can pull through.
Alternate Hernandez?
Although I don't have a voting ability, I also do think that due to their current progress in the application and the permitting and all of that, I don't think it would hurt us to allow them to finish the extension, and whatever happens during that time, it's in their hands. But I think it would be, as another commissioner stated, it would behoove us to let them have the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. I share the skepticism, although, I mean, I can take the loss of a partner as a non-financial factor in this, and I certainly don't want to turn something down because of the tariff threats that are floating through our economy and changing prospects of getting things done. I think we owe it to everybody to sort of float with what's going on in that regard. I do feel that I hope if your partner is there, that they come in with the plans as they are, and that they're not looking for changes in a new project and new entitlements. I'm not sure how I would feel, and I'm not seeing this again coming in if it failed the last time, although they certainly have the right to come back in. So I'm going to say yes. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that you can get, if they come in without a lot of requested changes, unless they're changes that Director Hadwin can make in his discretion. And I would try and limit them to changes that Director Hadwin has the authority to make. But I think at this point we have what I've heard is a majority in favor of this extension. The extension proposed is a 2-year extension, which will not last 2 years, but that's what's before us. So do I have a motion for a 2-year extension?
Motion to approve 2-year extension.
I'll second.
Can you call the roll, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 No.
Thank you. Good luck to you, gentlemen.
Madam Chair, if I might just ask a question of staff. It appears that our air conditioning system is either not on or on but not functioning. If we could make a call to somebody who could address that, I'd love it.
Comfortable in here. You would?
He's comfortable.
They're like, oh, it's so warm.
I don't really need my
decides.
sweater.
We'll have Noriko check on that since she's off the hook now.
I mean, I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, it is warm. but
Okay,
I
the
bet it's
next
78
item
here.
in front of us, and I'm going to no one needs a break, I'm assuming. Thank you. Okay. The next item in front of us is a request for a major development permit and minor modification application by PPUSA LLC owner for a 16-court commercial pickleball complex located at the southwest corner of Avenida Evelina and Airport Center Drive, Zone M1 General Plan, Neighborhood Community Commercial, Airport Land Use Compatibility Zone C and E, APNs 677-530-006 and 007, case DP 2024-0007 and AMM 2024-0013. The matter, staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as noted in your staff report,
This is a proposal for the development of a commercial 16-court pickleball complex open to the public. The project includes a concession building, off-street parking. The project site is approximately 1.78 acres, and as noted there, the project has 3 frontages on Airport Center Drive, Avenida Evelita, and Ramon Road. The project is comprised of the 2 application types you mentioned, as well as a major architectural that will go to the ARC following your consideration tonight. The project, as you see it here on the screen, I'll walk through these slides just a moment. This is a view with Ramon Road in the foreground and Avenida Evelita at the right side. There you can see the pickleball courts, a considerable amount of shade trees. The parking is comprised of both an off-street parking lot as well as bay parking that takes access directly from Airport Center Drive along the north. The building that's there, front and center, sort of rear and center, I should say, is the concessions building and administrative building where applicants or players check in, restroom facilities, and a small grab-and-go concessions area. This is the site in the current context. As you can see, there's an existing warehouse complex, a couple of them to the north of the project site. Otherwise, there's a fueling facility and convenience store to the west or to the left, and EOS gym and car rental facilities to the east. There you have a view of the site as looking to the south and west, and of the site, and then of a couple of the buildings in proximity to this project. And the project is also, as I mentioned, just south of the Palm Springs International Airport. So in terms of its conformance with the general plan and other regulatory statutes, it is a neighborhood community commercial, and as such, as a neighborhood serving facility or asset for the adjacent communities to the south and west, it does conform to the general plan land use. The zoning is M1. However, in M1, other uses that are in C1 and other zones are also permitted in M1, and this is one of those types of projects that does have permitted by right listing in C1 and therefore is permitted by right in M1. The project conforms to all of the development standards, and with the director approval of the administrative minor modification for a 10% reduction in off-street parking, it will conform with the off-street parking code as well. The other thing that's a bit unique about this project is it is within hazard zones C and E of the Palm Springs Airport Land Use Compatibility Master Plan. And the applicant has applied this project and reviewed it with the director of ALUC, and the director has deemed the project consistent with the Airport Master Plan, and that letter is in your packet today. So the proposed commercial use project scope: 16 lighted pickleball courts, 13 competition, 3 recreation. A roughly 1,200 square foot building, as I mentioned earlier, will have a second level open shading viewing deck and some covered outdoor seating. The on-site parking provides for 55 vehicles with code-compliant shade, EV charging stations, perimeter screening, decorative paving at the bay parking along Airport Center Drive. The project, because it is a play court, has a requirement for a 10-foot high perimeter fence, which is required by the zoning code for play courts. In this particular case, they're proposing a combination block wall and a decorative metal picket fence on top. The amenities are the lockers, ticket kiosk, bike racks, drinking fountains, toilets, and the grab-and-go space that I also mentioned. So here's a couple of views of the project. The first one on the top is as it would be viewed from Ramon Road. As I mentioned earlier, there's a considerable number of shade trees proposed in the site on all 4 sides, which I think is a favorable consideration and goes beyond what's required by our parking and zoning code. These are some images as you approach the facility. So the upper left is the entrance. There's a small raised hip roof pavilion there open for the public to identify where the entrance is. Over there at the upper right, you see the concessions building with its hip roof above it, and the concessions area with the windows on the lower level. The lower left shows you the view from the western side of that particular building, as well as some of the play courts. And then the lower right is the whole arrangement of the pickleball courts and the fencing. It's a prefabricated fencing that separates the courts from one another. The operating plan. This is intended to be a private recreational club, owner-operated. It will be open to the public with paid memberships with day and weekend passes for visitors. Its hour of operation, 6 to 11 p.m., 7 days per week. Staffing is anticipated to be 3 or 4 staffers on site per shift, estimated to be 15 full-time employees. As I mentioned, there's an on-site prepackaged grab-and-go, refreshments, sandwiches, and snacks that will be offered to the participants at the site. And the applicant has noted in their justification letter, which is in your packet, that they may be applying to the Alcohol and Beverage Control Board for an alcohol license for an on-site consumption by members only, which is a private club type of alcohol license where food service is not required. It is not a nightclub use and minors are allowed. It is not, however, a part of this particular approval that you're considering tonight, but something that they may consider in the future. So here is the site plan. Along the north, as you can see, there is decorative bay parking, which is required by our parking code. A 6-foot-high masonry perimeter wall, a 4-foot-high masonry screen wall around the parking lot, and that's required by the off-street parking ordinance. A 10-foot-high chain link fence, court fence on the west side of the courts. However, all the other sides of the court fencing is more decorative, with a 10-foot-high combination wall, 4-foot-high masonry wall with a 6-foot-high decorative metal picket fence on top. And then between the courts, as you saw in the earlier image, 42-inch high modular fencing that helps just keep the play to the court on which the ball is running around on. Here's the landscape plan. This is a preliminary landscape plan. It does show drought-tolerant plantings, as I've mentioned, generous amount of shaded parking, landscape buffers along Avenida Evelita, which also helps screen the off-street parking lot, and a considerable number of trees along the public sidewalks, and then adequate amounts of shrubs and ground covers. The actual final landscape plan will actually be submitted to the Architectural Review Committee when this goes before them, but this gives you a clear idea on the level of planting that's proposed, and it is, according to our estimate and review, adequate based on the planning development standards for landscapes of this type. So the findings for approval for the development permit are those in 940401 Part D, and we believe that those findings have been met. So our recommendation is to determine the project to be categorically exempt pursuant to CEQA, to approve the project based on the findings in the staff report subject to the conditions of approval therein, and to recommend approval by the ARC of the related major architectural application subject to the same conditions that are here today and any additional ones that you will impose. There were some public comments that came in electronically earlier today, as well as those which you heard today by members of the public. The concerns that those public comments that were received electronically primarily focused upon were environmental. One of the commenters were concerned about the adjacency to the airport in terms of jet exhaust. We have looked at that. We believe this is not necessarily downwind from the airport. The prevailing winds, of course, are from the northwest to the southeast, and so we think that that is certainly possible, but not likely on a constant basis. The other thing that was raised as a concern is the potential for noise from pickleball. As most of you know, pickleball has a louder play activity or dynamic than tennis does. And the applicants expressed concern about that relative to adjacent residential areas. I've put together an additional slide tonight, which I'll show you here. It's a bit dense, so I'll try to walk you through this. On the left side is a section out of our noise element of the general plan. And noise is measured around on the surrounding streets as well as the airport based on what are called noise contours. And those noise contours have a decibel level or what is called CNEL in this particular case. If you notice in the lower left, the site is sort of in that black and white image in the upper center. It's labeled there as the site. And you can barely see it. I hope it's visible in your packets. But the noise contours for the 65 and 70 CNEL overlap with this site. They're primarily, the noise source there is, of course, Ramon Road, which is a major thoroughfare carrying heavy traffic, including truck traffic, on a regular basis. As you look at the image in between there, the colored site plan, the site is in the purple area, or the purple area to the north. The big street you see there in black is Ramon Road. The residential areas that are near this project site are those that are shown in blue. That's an R2 zoned neighborhood, and they are approximately almost 300 feet from the proposed site. The comments that I've put in the middle of the site, I think, further describe the characteristics around the potential for adverse noise impacts. Those adjacent properties to the site are professional and industrial zoned parcels. They're not residential zones that are adjacent. As I mentioned, the 65 and 70 CNEL noise contours from Ramon Road already impact the site, as well as the R2 residential area to the south, 2 blocks away. Distance from the project site, as I earlier mentioned, is about 295 feet. In the material that you were received electronically by staff today, there was a report. And this lower table that I have here is table 1 from that report. It says it's the estimated minimum distance in feet from courts to avoid potential pickleball noise complaints. And you'll notice there the highest decibel rating in that particular chart is 60 decibels. The distance at which no mitigation would be at 200 feet away is the minimum, the minimum distance. And as it goes further down in the chart, the more mitigation and walls and things you provide, the lower the decibel rating becomes. Over on the lower right is also taken out of our noise element, and it gives you some comparative levels of what these numbers mean in terms of decibels and CNEL contours. You'll see there that conversations outdoors is a typical 65 dB, a busy street, 85, and they've gone further upwards until you get to airplane noise, which runs about 125 decibels. So as we've looked at this after receiving those comments, taking them obviously in serious consideration, we wanted to offer a couple of different thoughts for you. You may consider the project as it is, with the walls at 4 feet around it. There is also, because this is the M1 zone, there is the possibility for a perimeter wall on any property in M1 to have a solid masonry wall 5 foot back from the property line as high as 8 feet. So if the noise contour, the noise issues were ones that you believe may be concerning here, the applicant could take the existing 4 foot high masonry wall and raise it to 6 feet, or even as high as 8 feet. We've not made any recommendations in this case to raise those walls because, as we've said, looking at the proximity of the adjacent residential uses and development, we do not believe this is going to become a problem, especially within the context of the existing noise environment in this area. That concludes my staff report. I'm available to answer any questions. The applicant is here in the audience and will answer any other further questions you have, and they also have some of their team online. Thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Murphy?
Has anybody on staff, is anybody aware of complaints coming from Demuth Park and the pickleball courts? Because I think the distance from the pickleball courts at Demuth to the adjacent residential areas is about the same, roughly the same distance. So I wondered if there's been complaints from that neighborhood.
I would suggest that it's potentially even closer in the instance of Demuth. Adjacent low-density residential uses, I believe, would be closer than they would be in this instance. And I think if you look to this chart and some of the information, you know, that background sound level in that location would be lower. So the impact of pickleball noise may be greater. And in that instance, we're moving forward with outdoor pickleball courts. So I think our perspective is this is an area with a lot of ambient noise already, and we don't feel that there's any concern or impact around noise.
So my question is, have there been neighborhood complaints?
Yes, to the actual question that you asked, there's certainly an ongoing dialogue, I think, between that neighborhood and the plans for Demuth. I've not been very involved in those conversations, but I think there are some members of that community who are concerned about the noise in Demuth, yes.
The other question I have on this decibel relativity is, and this may be a little off base in a comparison, but for vacation rentals, the code compliance measures decibel levels periodically to make sure that neighbors aren't being too noisy and loud and disruptive. Does the decibel level predicted for this development compare to the vacation rental decibel level that's allowable? I'm looking for a comparison that's...
When you look at the city's noise ordinance, all of these various sites that we're talking about must conform to the city's noise ordinance. Now, the noise ordinance allows higher levels of ambient noise in commercial and industrial zones. So when code enforcement has to go out to a complaint in a single-family residential zone because a neighboring vacation rental or even other neighbor is noisy, they're measuring the threshold level, which is lower than what the threshold level is for commercial or industrial land uses. Okay. Now, I don't have the noise ordinance in front of me, but suffice to say, the comparative levels on this site allow for a higher threshold of noise than would be in the example that you gave with vacation rentals.
It's not a good comparison. And plus, there's almost 300 feet distance.
Right.
So.
I want to say there's a 15 to 20 decibel difference between what is permissible in a low-density residential area, where most of our vacation rentals would be, and what's permissible in an industrial area like this. I think 65 to 70 decibels is permissible from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rotman?
Yeah, thank you, Ken. A couple of questions. So within the noise ordinance, though, if I recall, after 10 p.m., you're required to have absolutely no, 10 p.m. was like the cutoff, right?
Well, it's a cutoff that takes you to a lower threshold of noise.
Okay.
It doesn't go down to zero.
Okay.
So at 10 p.m., if the decibel level, for example, in the residential zone is 50, by the time you get to 10 p.m., it drops down 5 or 10 decibels, recognizing that it's nighttime.
So in a commercial industrial area, what do we
It has a similar lowering at that same time frame. I think Planning Director Hadwin may be trying to pull up the noise ordinance. I don't have it in front of me.
Right.
But they all do bring down a certain level at 10 p.m.
In an industrial area, after 10 p.m., from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., you are permitted to have 55 decibel limit. And there are some exceptions to that I won't get into. The noise ordinance is very complicated.
Right.
Compare that to a low-density neighborhood where after 10 p.m., you're restricted to 40 decibels. So that's why I think there's so much sensitivity around parties and outdoor activities in vacation rentals in low-density neighborhoods, because that 40 decibel level, I mean, if you look at this chart on the side, that's the sound of a low-speed car driving by versus, loud conversation in a backyard. So it's just a different standard applied to a site like this versus something in a residential neighborhood.
And do we know what kind of decibel levels we're at with a pickleball court?
Off the top of my head, no, I do not.
Okay.
What I can, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What I can characterize is normally the noise nuisances that we're experiencing neighbor to neighbor or zone to zone are around low frequency noise, those which have a longer wavelength and are more likely to be those that you feel like a thumping sound from a radio or something. Pickleball is a higher level frequency sound, a shorter wavelength. And so it's a noise, it's a type of noise that's different than what you would normally think in terms of nuisance noise.
Okay. I mean, part of this question is going into their hours of operation, their proposed hours of operation, which is to 11 p.m. And if there is a noise level by a pickleball, court at a certain point, it's not going to drop between 10 and 11 unless it's just a lack of patrons. So I'm trying to understand what we're actually dealing with the hours of operation and the potential noise?
I think it may be a good question to ask the applicant in terms of whether they think that they can comply with the city's noise ordinance in the hours of 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. when we have those more restrictive hours.
Yeah, okay. And then, as I recall, on the fence and ordinances, typically it's a change of material and also plane. I don't see in there, especially along Ramon Road, it's one long 450 lineal feet of the same fence. So I'm wondering whether that was a consideration in reviewing this?
It wasn't, but it's something that we can certainly take into consideration.
Okay.
Yep, not a problem.
All right. And then one of the letters we got talked about an ADA court. Is there any requirement in the city codes that you're aware of that would require, I'm assuming there's ADA access, but is there any requirement to actually provide a court that meets wheelchair pickleball standards? I don't know what that is, but I'm just asking.
I don't know, but the ADA requires accessibility to public places. And so I'm going to also defer that one to the applicant who may know more about the question of accessible courts.
Okay, all right. And I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, I got a number of questions. Ken, I'm looking at in the staff report package, the vicinity map that you provide. If you could go to that, I don't think you can bring it up on the screen because it may not be part of your presentation, but it shows the site and then it shows, the proximity with the 500-foot radius drawn on it. Is that map generally considered to scale?
Yes.
Okay, so Ramon Road is 100 feet in width, as I recall, from various projects that we've had. Is that correct? Does that sound right? 50 foot from center line?
It's around 80 or 100, yes.
So if I'm looking at this vicinity map, and then I see the Ramon Road at 100 feet, and then a row of lots on the south side of Ramon Road that are currently the vacant sand lots that are in a commercial or industrial zone. The residential, as I recall, in this block starts mid-block, so that row of lots that are on Calle de Ricardo, on the north side of Calle de Ricardo, those are residential, and those are built out as small, low-scale apartments, right?
That's correct.
I don't see how you can get 295 feet of distance. Just looking at the scaling, Ramon Road is 100, those lots are thinner than Ramon Road.
The measurement that I took and that I was explaining was to the zone boundary. That area, that first block between Ramon and Calle de Ricardo is a P zone, or professional uses. Those smaller, older apartment buildings that are on the north side of Calle de Ricardo are what we would consider today a legal non-conforming use.
Oh, okay.
So today, in the P zone, you would not be seeing residential uses built there.
And you would also be subject to the higher noise ordinance requirements, given that they are in a P zone, despite being residential activity in a P zone.
But nonetheless, the two noise reports that we got from the various entities refer to zoning and uses. And the fact is, nobody's taking over those residential uses. They are going to remain residential uses for the foreseeable future, correct?
Correct, but we need to apply the city's noise ordinance as it's written to those zones. And so I think the point that we're making is, per the city's noise ordinance, we feel that it satisfies the legal requirements. I understand that there's a reality there that is not based in the regulation, but that was our perspective.
All right. So let me get off that subject. And I'm sorry that there's no engineering representative here, because I did have some engineering questions. So I'm going to pose them to you, Ken, and see.
I'll do my best.
There was a little confusion in the plans in the sense of the intersection of Evelita and Ramon. On Evelita, right now, you can only turn right in and right out at that intersection, correct?
Mm-hmm.
It appears on most of the developers' plans that that was being altered so that you could make a left turn from Ramon Road traveling eastbound and north into Evelita. Does that sound right?
I think so. Bear with me just a minute and I get to the site plan that shows the street.
Yeah, so there you can see that the little whatever you call that thing,
We call it a pork chop.
the pork chop, has been squared off on the one side, which is great, because that was, I want there to be access, obviously, with a left turn lane on Ramon to turn. But I didn't see any sort of reference to that actually happening. Are we certain that that's going to happen?
I'm sorry, I'm certain that
Are we
what is going
certain
to
that
happen?
that's going to happen, that the alteration of that intersection is going to happen such that traffic can safely and permitted-wise make a left turn from Ramon onto Evelita?
Give me just a minute, let me get to the Avenida.
Because one of the
On
plans.
page 8, I'm sorry?
Yeah, one of the plans even shows a median developed on Ramon, which doesn't exist today.
Yeah, so the Ramon Road and Avenida Evelita engineering conditions begin on page 8 of the conditions of approval. Let me just take a quick look through these so I understand
There's
it.
nothing referring to that.
So there's nothing here under the Avenida Evelita portion in which we would be removing or modifying the pork chop. Nor is there anything in the Ramon Road portion. So the pork chop stays.
Right, but the pork chop as shown here on this plan in front of us right now is not the way it exists today.
That may just be a matter of,
There's a pork chop there today, but
Right.
it's a triangular shaped pork chop,
let me see if I can pull up an
which
aerial.
does not allow traffic.
Hold on just a
traveling
second, I'll see if I can
eastbound
find an aerial of it here
So how
with
are they
us.
going to get to the site? Yeah. So I think that's an important detail that we need to make sure is if and when and this gets approved and moves forward, we need to have access there. Otherwise, it's going to be a mess of cars that are coming from Palm Springs neighborhoods to the west, traveling eastbound on Ramon. They're not going to necessarily know or desire to turn on the street before this one. They're going to wait and they're going to make an illegal turn across Ramon into the pork chop and cause all kinds of potential traffic nightmares. So I guess all I'm saying is I was curious because I didn't see any sort of validation for that amendment happening, but I think it's really important that it does.
Commissioner Miller, I think it's a good point that you're raising. I don't have an answer for it, but I will absolutely bring it up with engineering.
Yeah.
They're normally, on top of these things in a very minute level. So let me bring that up. And if it is a situation where they are assuming that we maintain the left in, left out, right in, right out, then it will stay, but we will come up with a logical answer for how that functions if the pork chop stays.
Okay,
The drafting issue between whether it's currently a triangle and whether it's the way it's shown on the earlier landscape plan is merely
That's
a
an
drafting issue.
overlay of the survey.
Correct,
So,
yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and related to that is typically engineering would have a condition related to the median development in the median of Ramon Road, similar to when we had the credit union and the ATM recently. There was a detailed condition with the 14-foot median and such. I didn't see that either. So that's, that aspect of it would further indicate that there's a question about whether that pork chop is going to be changed or not.
Correct.
Okay. Then I have a question about drainage. Approximately 80% of the site is impervious. It looks like there's an underground structure under the parking area. I'm not a drainage expert. I just wanted to make sure that is getting looked at in detail because this is a lot of pavement to drain.
It absolutely is.
And so let's
And-
make sure that that structure underneath the parking lot is going to be able to hold tons of water.
And that is something that engineering does review, as well as with the engineering plan check, consulting the third-party plan check. On this drawing, in the center part of the parking lot there that's between the courts and Avenida Evelita, you can see some lines drawn, some vertical lines drawn. Those indicate the underground stormwater detention structures.
Right.
And I can't answer the question whether they are adequate, but engineering, through their review of the project, will confirm that.
Okay, that's fine. And then also an engineering question. Engineering, in a footnote in your staff report, engineering has rejected the the driveway shown on this plan that's in front of us, what have they suggested as an alternative? Or what is either the staff or the developer or engineering looking at as the alternative? Is there going to be a mid-block entrance and exit on Avalita?
Well, you reminded me of something that I failed to remember to bring up to you guys. That staff or that footnote talks about it. The way this thing is currently drawn, the vehicular access into the parking lot is there off of Airport Center Drive. The engineering department is fine with that driveway access coming off from Airport Center Drive. However, it has to be 30 feet from the intersecting corner of the two property lines. As it's drawn right now, it's a little bit too close to the corner.
So there'll be a little jog there.
So yes,
Okay.
they have the
That's
two
doable.
options. They can either take that and shift it over slightly to the west, still keeping the access point off of Airport Center, or they have the option of bringing the access into the parking lot off of Avenida Evelita.
Okay.
And engineering is fine with either of those, so long as the distance to the corners are correct.
Sort of a related question on the parking lot, which is a dead-end parking lot. Again, it's hard sometimes for us to really review these plans on the computer, but it didn't appear that there was like a hammerhead or like a space marked out so that somebody could turn in and back out to get out.
Yeah, the plans are small, but as you can see on this particular one that I have up on the board, there is a small hammerhead or backing up area for those last end spaces. It's really only one end space that has a difficulty. The first end space on the east side has adequate area to back up and move forward.
No, but that's the backup area for the parking space itself, assuming you get into the parking space. What if I travel down that and all the parking spaces are taken? There's no way. Am I being asked to do a 14-point turn to get back forward, or am I going to be asked to back out that 150 feet or more to get out?
That's a fair question. The same condition actually exists in the city parking garage over by Arenas Road, and people wind up negotiating a 14-point turn and get themselves turned around. You are correct.
It's a mess.
It's
So, I mean,
tough.
it would simply mean Xing out one of those parking spaces, which would further reduce their parking. But I think that's important if that is going to function like a relatively, decent parking lot.
And I can review that more with engineering and the applicant. We may have some space there where we can take the first landscape peninsula there on the west side of that drive aisle and bring it back by about a half perhaps and give them a little bit of space so they could turn around as you're mentioning.
Okay.
It's a good point. It's a good observation.
No, just a couple more. I'm trying to get through these. Lighting, has there been a lighting plan done yet? I'm a little bit concerned with lighting impacts to Ramon Road with light spillage.
The lighting plan that came with the application did not have a complete presentation on it, so I've conditioned the project to make sure that it does conform to the city's outdoor lighting ordinance, and we'll have a full photometric site plan that will be reviewed by the Architectural Review Committee, and also we'll scrutinize it at staff level.
Okay, then my final question for you is...
You're doing pretty good on these engineering questions.
The bay parking, this is a lot of bay parking, the backup parking into the street. I remember we did approve as a commission a small project with bay parking up off of like Olivera or something. It was a residential project up northwest. And it was only like maybe 6 or 8 spaces. This is 24. Can you recall, have we, the city, recently approved and seen built this extensive of backout parking into the street for a brand-new project?
In one of the versions of the Orchid Tree project, which is in the tennis club neighborhood, there was a stretch of bay parking on, I believe the streets are Cahuilla and Bellardo. And there's quite a long stretch of bay parking on that project as it was preliminarily proposed in the last set of schemes. We've not seen the new schemes for that project yet, but neighborhoods like the tennis club neighborhood, it's not uncommon to see a whole block. There may be multiple hotels, but you will often have a whole block of bay parking because of the older development pattern that's there.
Just as a question, that's a rehab. Doesn't that impact it differently, that you have a whole block of bay parking when you're saving a historic structure?
They are not required to increase the amount of parking than what the site previously had, but that doesn't necessarily impact whether it's bay parking or a parking lot.
That's it for me. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Commissioner Baker?
Hi, Mr. Lyons. Going back to your beautiful noise chart, could we possibly go back? Nope, you just passed it. Yeah, there we go. Why did we not take into consideration the airplane noise? And we were talking about traffic on Ramon. I live on the other side of the airport, and that's far more noise than trucks and buses driving down Ramon Boulevard.
The actual noise contours for the airport do not overlap onto this site, curiously enough. That's not to say there's no noise.
There's noise.
I understand completely. But as you look at the noise contours that were established in the general plan, the noise contours for the airport noise don't extend beyond about a roughly similar expansion on either side of it than what you're seeing here on the road. I can't explain why, but we all do know that there's noise from the airport that goes beyond that. I didn't identify it in the staff report because the contours did not overlap the site.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. And second question on the lighting, doesn't ALOC sort of prevail because there are all types of regulations on lighting because it's an airline approach that probably would even supersede the city's lighting?
They're actually as stringent as the Airport Land Use Compatibility Commission imposed a set of conditions of approval on this project that are also in your staff report. So you have not only our conditions, but also those from ALOC.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Lyon, do you have questions?
I have a couple of questions before I come to my bigger question, which deals with the noise. First of all, in the findings that were required, one of them is that the project is consistent with the general plan and with any applicable specific plan. We're silent regarding the specific plan. Does that mean, is it fair to say there is no specific plan governing this?
That is correct.
Okay. Finding number 4, the proposed height and massing is consistent with the adjacent development. In this case, there are a number of vacant lots there, and I am thinking ahead and wondering how the land would be used in the future if it has any kind of noise concerns or if it would be impacted. And so what I'm wondering is, have we heard from any of the landowners of those adjacent properties or not?
I have not.
Okay.
Not the adjacent ones on this block. Sites to the north and a little bit to the west. There's been ongoing conversations between the airport and various parties who are in control of that site or interested in gaining control of that site, to thinking about different ways to support the future car rental facility that will go on the airport property just north of here, or off-site airport parking. Those are the kinds of conversations we've had with different people over the years. Nothing sort of material or advanced.
But they haven't reacted to this proposed use? No. Okay.
And those uses, other than if it does become structured parking, there would, in the past discussions on that surface parking lot he's talking about, there were no structures other than carport structures.
Okay. Finding number 8, we're required to find about landscaping, and then that the design of the stormwater management features are appropriately integrated with other designs. In looking at my teeny tiny drawings, it looks as though all the stormwater is handled in storage underground. There's no retention basins, there's no channels or anything going on grade.
There's no other retention that's being shown as part of the engineering of this site. There certainly is still obviously some permeable areas on the site, and I think the applicant can probably clarify this for me. If there was a large amount of water that's stormwater, for example, hitting the area of the courts, it's likely that some of this will run off into the adjacent landscape beds. But the understanding I have from the engineering work that I've seen on the project is that the underground storage has been calculated to be enough for the stormwater that the project site requires.
Okay. So you are comfortable that we could make the finding number 8, that is required, that it's consistent with the site
Yes.
design? Okay.
Oops, sorry. Just in recognition of the engineering conditions as well, right? So they will need to prepare more precise grading
Yes,
plans, et cetera, that will
absolutely.
be reviewed by engineering to address any issues that may come up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the big one, of course, at least to my thinking, is the information that we have received in the last 24, 48 hours regarding potentially adverse effects on the public welfare from the noise. And it's hard to evaluate some of them. One of the most one of the most lengthy documents that we received had no attribution. It was quotes from 50, 80 people about the impact of pickleball on their mental health, on their lives, but there's no way of verifying any of it, and particularly in the short amount of time since we received it. The other one was submitted by a pickleball sound engineer or something that I hadn't heard of before, and pickleball noise consultant. And I note that he does have a number of professional credentials, or he cites a number of professional credentials, all of which raise some concerns, and I think you've heard this from others. I'm wondering, had you had this information at the time staff reviewed the project in the first place, would you have recommended any differently regarding noise studies, environmental analysis that should be done on the project? Does any of this concern you, and would it have changed how we would have reviewed the project?
I don't want to be dismissive of concerns around noise, but we have to evaluate it within the regulatory and policy framework that we have in front of us, including our noise ordinance and including the noise element of our general plan. And in doing so, this is an area with a lot of ambient noise. And so if you go back to the chart that Ken had shown you earlier, from our noise element, this is an area where we expect the ambient noise to be 70 decibels or greater. And in the chart that the expert that you're referencing provided, as you go across background noise, even at 60, which is lower than we would expect here, you're looking at a distance of 200 feet to avoid impacts on sensitive uses. We're above that. So our sense is, in light of the additional information that's been provided, it's confirmed what we suspected, which is at 65, 70, or 75 decibels, that distance is going down, and we are on one of the city's busiest roads, adjacent to one of the city's most noise-generating uses, in an area that is designated and zoned for higher intensity commercial and industrial uses, which by their nature generate noise. So if there is an area of the city in which to have this kind of activity, our perspective in a policy and regulatory framework that we have in front of us is it's here. And also evaluating it in light of the noise ordinance that we have in an industrial zone, again, this is a site that is identified as being capable of generating some of the highest levels of noise in the city. So from our perspective, we have to have a nexus to really sort of impose additional conditions on the project that sort of, the use is permitted, right? The use is by right, so we're really looking at site plan and circulation here. And our view was this is an appropriate site that doesn't warrant additional study or mitigation.
As I understood the information that was presented to us, it wasn't dwelling on decibels. More it was the nature of the noise, how it carried, and the long hours, and the inconsistent, there's not a beat, you can't dance to it, the kind of the inconsistent and unexpected quality of it. does our noise ordinance, and it's been a long time since I looked at it, does our noise ordinance only govern absolute decibels, or does it define nuisances? Can nuisances be created by noises that are of a lower decibel, but for other reasons are disturbing to neighbors?
It talks about the notion of constant noise versus periodic noise events. So if you imagine a Harley-Davidson motorcycle running down Ramon Road, that's a periodic and for most people an obnoxious noise. That would be a periodic event. The playing of a pickleball back and forth, whether you're having people play all day long or the courts are empty until 5 p.m., is something that initially, when I thought through this thing as the planner analyzing it, it was more of a periodic noise than a constant noise.
Okay, my last question then is on a number of concerns about the parking and the entrance to the parking, which I share with Commissioner Miller. And it's irregular to me to see a project presented before the commission wherein the staff report says, oh yeah, there are these other things that aren't addressed and those will be fixed before it goes to the Architectural Review Commission or committee, which is not a body that appropriately or typically addresses these types of issues. Is this common practice and I just haven't paid attention to it?
No.
Do we need more study?
I don't think it's common practice, and it's not something that we would certainly make our common practice. I think it came to light a little bit late in the process, admittedly, and I think we felt in conversations with engineering that the change necessary to address engineering's concern was relatively insubstantial and could be accommodated without major changes to the site plan or the circulation. Of course, you need to make the finding and you need to feel confident in that decision. So, so that was our perspective, and just to kind of help keep things moving along, but I do understand that this is squarely within your purview and you need the information you need to make a decision.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to go a little further on noise. I think if we were, one of the missives we got talked about a city that hasn't yet incorporated pickleball into their zoning standards, and I think that adequately describes our city. Would you agree that this is a new phenomenon and it's not been dealt with to date? So were this to come to us at a different time, we might be looking at this differently. And I'm kind of, I want to say that my concern is the residential neighborhoods, but it's also ever seeing this vacant land next to this developed. It's some concern for the car barn, which you describe as storage, but it actually is used very, very often as a fundraising space for our charities in the city. So we've got one adjacency that has evening charitable use, and we have adjacent sites. So I understand we're working within our regulatory environment, and probably the two things we can do within that regulatory environment have to do with changing the hours to match our noise ordinance, which starts at 7 a.m. instead of 6 a.m., correct, and ends at 10 instead of 11 in terms of impacts on neighborhoods. And we can also require a consistent fence or some kind of something consistent around it without holes in it that can go up to 8 feet. But not go further. Those are the kinds of things that we can do. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I stopped listening to you. What was that last question?
The question is,
I shouldn't admit it that way.
within our regulatory environment, what can we do?
Yes.
And what I want to do, this is my concern, is I also have a concern for the vacant lots that may never be developed. And I live in a community, just to explain it, that had a proposed outdoor pickleball coming right next to our community, which, because of that, every person in our community, myself included, read every bit of literature we could find on the sound impacts. And when they're happening, they're consistent. I mean, it's the sound, but it's again and again and again. And it seems to, even though the issues weren't ascribed in the materials we got, in the materials I read, they were ascribed to specific neighborhoods where there was testimony and there were issues and ordinances being drafted. So one question is, what can we do?
Yep.
And from the point of view that I take this seriously, and it's, I think this is probably the only area in the city we might be able to allow something outdoors. But I think I want to think about the adjacent properties that aren't developed, that I would like to see developed someday, and it's community serving. So if it was a bank next door, what can we do? If that use is not a self-storage use, what can we do to protect those vacant parcels so that they're developable?
And I want to say, Madam Chair, don't listen to you. I was getting clarification from Ken on
It's
some of what was
perfectly
proposed, so I
fine.
could answer the question, and trying to be a little funny. A couple things. Let me first address the point you're making about the zoning code, because I think it's a good one, and obviously it's something that we need to look at through the zoning code update. And so we had, our zoning code is so old that the only sort of equivalent that we regulated were tennis courts, because it was written at a time when Palm Springs only had tennis courts. And so we had made an administrative change through one of our annual updates, I believe 2 years ago now, where we expanded that definition to be sports courts. And this does comply with the sport court requirements of the zoning code, but it is something that we need to look at in more detail through the zoning code update. So that is something that we're going to do. To the point about adjacency, I think, again, we need to remember that this is an area that is zoned for manufacturing M1 uses. So those, again, are uses that by their nature tend to either generate more noise or be in areas that are subject to more noise. And so their construction standards, when they are constructed, would address that through the building code and other processes. In addition, because of the adjacency to the airport, there are additional standards imposed through that process in terms of noise mitigating constructive standards. So I feel like it's addressed in all of those ways. The car barn to the north has a 15 to 20 foot wall on the south side of it, so that is already providing a barrier to those uses that are into the interior of the site. And so we feel, again, satisfied that that conflict is mitigated through that construction, through that development that is there already. In terms of what's before you, yes, absolutely. I think, and a few people have raised it, so it seems like this may be where the conversation is going. I think we can certainly have a conversation with the applicant about potentially, it looks like they have some walls around the courts themselves that might go up to 10 feet in height with some chain link. Perhaps we look at increasing that to something more like 8 feet of actual wall to help mitigate. But I think it's a conversation to have with the applicant in terms of what works for them operationally and to find the right balance there. But yes, I do think that's something the commission can consider tonight.
And I guess the last question I have, because I drive Ramon all the time, it is my street into the city. And I know that there are times that Ramon is wall-to-wall car, and then there are times where I'm the only car turning right and the only one on the street. So the 70 decibels seems to me that it probably is more consistent, but not completely consistent. And I wonder how, is it in code that it's, Do we, I mean, is it already determined that it's 60 to 70 decibels? And
It's in the noise element of the general plan, so that is the sort of
So even
regulatory
if
document.
the street is empty and nobody's driving it and it's quiet at that
Well, and
2 minutes?
I would have to go back since we didn't update that element as part of this recent update. You know, I can't speak to whether that was an average or or a conservative approach. But you know, you're right; it isn't consistent, and I think we have to apply the standards that are in the general plan noise element because that's what we adopted.
And I can slightly clarify that also, that the noise element, when it talks about these CNEL contours, are at city future build-out. But build-out of Ramon Road, aside from the few empty parcels that you see here, those traffic-generating uses are all pretty much built out. So I think that when you look at the noise ordinances, yes, they cannot say that at all times of the day and night it's 60 or 70 CNEL, but that's what is recognized as the upper limit that's likely to happen on that street.
And it's pretty, I mean, if it's not built out right there, it's built out in the adjacent city.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Yes.
I actually have one, and Ken, it's in regard to the 10-foot perimeter fence/wall that is required, I guess, for the court.
Correct.
And you said they were proposing right now a combination of solid and metal, decorative metal fencing or chain link, whatever. Is there anything that would preclude that 10-foot requirement as an enclosure from being solid? CBI, block, in other words, it doesn't have to be open, right? Because I got a little confused. You had mentioned something about in an industrial zone, the wall can be 8 feet high, 5 feet away from the property line. But if they're required to have that 10-foot enclosure, that 10-foot enclosure could be solid, is my question. I guess I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but.
No, I understand. The comment clarifying, as you just did, the 8-foot high max is for typically the perimeter walls on a property in the M1 zone, can't be higher than 8 feet, 5 foot back from the front property line. Since you have 3 property lines here on this site, three front property lines, it's surrounded on 3 sides, that limit of 8 feet, 5 feet back would be on all those set 5 foot back. On the east side, it could be a maximum of 8 on the property line. The play fence, if I can call it that, in the section of the zoning code that addresses fencing for commercial play courts, it identifies it as a 10-foot high, I believe it says fence. Now, when we look at our 9301 section of the zoning code, walls and fences, we tend to not make a distinction. So your question is a valid one. Could that perimeter 10-foot barrier that's required for the play court be solid masonry? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
I think theoretically, yes. The answer would be yes.
My concern would be about transparency. And so I think that we would want to look at some way of ensuring potentially some transparency. I think the goal of fencing is to allow some transparency where it's needed. So it's worth discussion and a question to the applicant.
Although I'm not certain that the fence requirement for sports courts is to keep the balls from going off the court, right? Typically, you see a tennis court with a 10-foot high black, vinyl coated chain link fence.
Right.
That's to keep the tennis balls from bouncing into the neighbor's yard or into the pool at the at Spencer's or but that's the transparency. I mean, if anyway, I think the important thing is to try to mitigate some of the potential noise that is going to be an issue here.
Agreed, and I think I just meant I wonder if there's a design solution there that makes it solid and noise mitigating while still sort of allowing some of that visibility if it's desired.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we've got more questions. We may take a break.
I don't really have a question, but a quick comment to Scott's comment is I believe in the engineering recommendations it says they wanted solid walls, not open walls. And also with the wind down there, I think it would make more sense to have solid walls, then.
I believe that's referencing the perimeter fence. So we're
Right.
talking about multiple walls and fences at this point.
Oh,
There is
okay.
a 4-foot perimeter fence, right?
Right now, it's a four-foot perimeter wall with a 6-foot
Wall.
decorative metal picket fence on top of it at the play court. It's a 4-foot high wall as the screening for the parking lot on the east side of the property. And it is, let me look at this real quick before I believe it's I may have to have the applicant clarify this for me. I think the wall on the the west side is 4 feet high too, but I better let the applicant clarify that for us because I'm actually not sure. You can see it in this one where you're viewing it in the top of it, perspective. There's kind of a fence of some sort over there on the left side. That's the chain link fence for the sports court. And then you see the light brown just left of the trees. That's their perimeter property line wall. I think on that side it is 6 feet, now that I'm looking at it.
Ken, on the west side, it calls it out as a masonry and metal fence, 10 feet. It's, on their key, it's number 1.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Are there any other questions before we open the public hearing? Seeing none, the public hearing is open. The applicant has 10 minutes.
So Max Dirda, and I have Mark Stewart online. Yes. Okay. And you can share your time. Come up to the podium and identify yourself.
First, my name is Max Stewart. I'm an urban planner and work with my dad, Mark Stewart Architect. And we designed this pickleball sports complex along with the owner and operator, Cliff Teston. So I'm excited to address you guys and address any questions that you might have. I plan to tell you guys about the driveway throat and the way we're going to move it. It's going to be 5 foot to the west, so it's just an additional few feet, and then we'll make those minor adjustments as needed. As for the landscape plan, there was some questions about clarifying the shrubs and the bushes. Like we identified the perimeter trees as mesquite trees, but we're going to be clarifying and finalizing the landscape plan to also identify those bushes and shrubs. But they're going to be in their current locations. Let's see. As for the screening of the property, as the property is going to be lined with quite a lot of shade trees, which I think is going to benefit the noise reduction, to the adjacent properties, as well as the masonry and metal fencing. It's going to be a 4-foot tall block wall with 6-foot tall pickets, and then there's also a concern of wind coming onto the site as well, and we were proposing to have some mesh, between the pickets, not only to kind of like keep out the wind and the sand, but also to keep in the pickleballs. Yes. Also, there was a question that came up about ADA access. I'd like to address that. We've always planned, to have ADA access, to the facility. We don't have ADA courts, for the people in the wheelchairs to play, but they're certainly welcome to, and they certainly have access to the courts. Those are the things I wanted to address.
You have, at this point, I can't have people ask you questions. Yes. After the rest of the public testifies, we'll then keep you here and ask you questions. But if you have more to say, or the people that are with you have more to say about this, as a general presentation, please feel free, you've got time.
Well, no, that's it. This is the stuff I wanted to address right away.
Thank you. Are there members of the public who wish to speak online?
I don't think anyone else in the room. We've already heard a speaker. No one online has raised their hand, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So if you'd come back up, you can only speak once if you were raising your hand from the audience. But if the applicant would come back up, I'm sure there will be questions. Yes, we could take a 5-minute break. Can we do that in public hearing? I've never done it in public hearing.
It's technically not a public hearing, so I think you can.
We can take a 5-minute break. Great.
Sounds good.
Reopening the public hearing, and are we live? We are on air. So as I take comments for the applicant, I'm going to go in reverse direction since I started with Commissioner Morrow, and I'm going to start with Vice Chair Olayan and go down the line if people have questions, and then come back to me because my position's always last.
Questions or comments?
Comments or questions to the applicant. If you don't have any, it's fine.
I have just one. The use of chain link fence and then some more decorative steel fence from 4 feet up. You indicated something about the lots of landscaping would help with the sound attenuation, which is a different belief from what from what I've learned from sound consultants, and I'm wondering what your understanding is of sound attenuation, and did you work with a sound consultant at all during this, and is your wall design in recognition of that?
To answer your question, we did not hire a sound consultant. We believed that, the site was in a commercial area, that there wouldn't necessarily be a whole lot of regulation on the noise, and also the adjacency to the airport and other industrial uses as well. As for the wall condition, I think it's sufficient, from an architect perspective, like not only to keep in pickleballs, but also for like the solidarity and uniformity of the site.
So are the portions with slats, will those also stop balls from going out?
Yes, ma'am.
They will, okay, so they're close enough together that the balls aren't. I've never played pickleball, I don't know how big. Okay. Okay, and then one other question. Somewhere in the comments that we received, there was suggestion that there is a type of racket, or paddle, excuse me, a type of paddle, and a ball that are quieter. Are you aware of those? Is that something that, from an operational perspective, is that something that you could require that people use?
Nothing that is not something that we took into consideration when we started the project. I didn't know that there was such a thing as soft paddles or foam balls, but I think it's perfectly fine to use a hard paddle. Just kind of like
the traditional ones.
They're traditional ones.
Okay, and have you developed other pickleball courts before?
No, I have not, but I've done extensive research along with my father, Mark Stewart. Even had a couple pickleball, like sport court manuals that we've referenced.
Okay, thank you.
Going down, questions, Commissioner Baker?
All right, so are you amenable to some type of mitigation for the noise utilizing a fencing material perhaps different than what you have planned today?
Yes, we are open to the consideration. The lead architect, Mark, was maybe proposing a 6-foot tall masonry fence and only a 4-foot tall picket fence on top. This is some design considerations we were thinking about.
Okay, and you mentioned that there are different types of courts. You said there are 3 recreational courts, but they all look exactly the same. Can you explain that?
Exactly, yes. In the manual, the difference between a competitive style court and a recreational size is the outside boundary. So the striped in boundary is exactly the same, but the outside boundary around the courts.
So the blue we see on,
Yes, the blue is bigger.
oh, okay, thank you.
Commissioner Murphy.
Can you, have you looked at other sites? I'm just trying to get a sense of what other locations you considered, if any, and how you ended up selecting this particular site.
Yes, Commissioner. When the owner originally approached us with this project, he already...
The landowner?
Landowner, yes. Landowner was in the process of buying the property, and he was pretty certain that this was the location that he wanted to have the pickle sports complex.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rotman?
Yeah, so I know this isn't part of the purview, but you're applying for a beer and wine license. And then when I look at the layout of the concession building, is it all going to be sort of in the display cases? You pick up a bottle of wine or pick up a can of beer. It's all, you're not serving it, basically. Is that right?
Exactly. It's self-serve.
Self-service, okay. And then you said you haven't done a sound, you haven't worked with an acoustic engineer about the sound or noise. Well, we've talked about the concerns about it. How do you feel about reducing your hours of operation from, especially the early morning hours and the late evening hours?
I think we were really close in alignment with the noise ordinance. Certainly this is something we can comply with.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Can I-
I'm sorry. And then we talked about the soft paddle and the balls. If I understand your operation, people bring their own equipment. Is that right? You're not providing mandatory equipment for the pickleball players.
That's correct. People would bring their own paddles and pickleball equipment, but I think the intent is for the owner to also sell merchandise on the site.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Morrell? Any questions?
It's, I guess, kind of an obvious question, but did you consider some kind of sun protection? Even on just some of the courts, maybe providing some shade structure or something?
That was something we considered, in a couple initial designs, and then the owner was insisting on having a completely outdoor, play space. But also we provide a lot of sanctuary, if you will, around for the patrons of the site, with a large shade cover over the concession building, as well as the providing of drinks.
Yes.
Yeah, one more question. So also on the plans, on the second level, you have a outdoor patio, and then that's maybe a third of the building, and the other third is identified as roof. Is there any plan to expand the outdoor patio onto that roof area, or is that all with equipment and that sort of thing?
Right now it's just, vacant space for like, rooftop equipment or, other utilitization such as that. There's no plan to expand it right now.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Murphy, you've got your light on. Commissioner Baker, you have a question?
Yeah, going back to the heat and the sun, because I think I was thinking my first observation is like there's no shade on this. I mean, a day like today, it would just be oppressive to be out there, plus the heat from the concrete rising up. Which raises the second question. So this time of year, I think the 6 a.m. start time probably would be more beneficial to many people trying to get in before it gets too hot, before they go to work, rather than like 11 o'clock at night. This Palm Springs does tend to be a kind of an earlier.
Is there a question?
Yeah, so I'm saying, have you considered maybe shifting that hour from closing at 10 and still maintaining the 6 a.m. opening, but and also having some type of mesh shelter over a few courts, especially the western ones, perhaps, just to give to do a little bit of shade cover for the players.
That's something we're willing to explore. But right now, it's like our design intent is to have open court play. I see. I don't know. There's currently no plans for it right now. The owner wants to keep everything within a certain budget, so he doesn't want to add any shade structures at this time. Additional shade structures.
Is your owner, you're not the owner then?
I'm not. I'm the architect.
You're the architect?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just, just first on shade, are you aware that the courts at Demuth will be entirely shaded?
What was the last part?
The new courts at Demuth will be shaded, your competition will be shaded?
I don't know. Right now, I looked around a couple of the pickleball sport courts around town, and a lot of them are not shaded.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. We
Yes, ma'am.
actually have the authority to set the hours because the decibels can, because the noise ordinance allows us, or because the noise that you can have before 7 and after 10, we have the ability to restrict those hours from 7 to 10. And from 6 to 7, that's something that's, I believe, in our discretion. So to do those hours, and part of the reason is that there will be less ambient noise out there and more chance for that noise to travel. To keep those hours, would you be willing to use the different paddles and different balls during those hours and require it?
I think the operational intent was to let people.
I'm asking you
bring
a
their-
question, not what your operational intent is, but what would you do? Are
I
those
believe
hours important to you, and would you make changes to keep them, is what I'm asking you.
I'm not able to individually answer that question at
Thank
the
you.
moment. Thank you.
I think that's probably the most important question I wanted to ask you.
Mark here.
We have the other applicant wanting to speak, if you would like them to answer that question, Madam
think
Chair.
that would be good.
Thank you. Mark Stewart, if you would like to
Yes.
respond.
And
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart, the senior architect on the project. And to address the issue about the paddles, I don't think the owner would be in a position to tell the people what type of paddle to play and what type of ball. So I don't believe that would be the avenue we would want to take to address the noise issue. I think we'd be more inclined to address the noise issue through the perimeter wall. Although I did want to point out that combination of masonry and metal wall, very architecturally pleasing to look at. It gives you that club-like look. And then from our experience, because all of us are pickleball players, a combination of masonry and open provides the least amount of echo potential. It provides sound attenuation for the lower level of the wall, but also it doesn't introduce the echo component that can happen when you have a tall masonry wall. So we believe that it's the best balance between echo attenuation and external sound attenuation. The one thing that we did look at and are proposing is a mesh material on the metal itself, and that mesh material is semi-transparent, but also provides a wind and a sound barrier. And that's what we have found in our research, pretty extensive on the various types of pickleball courts that we've looked at that were successful, they employ a technique like that. Our experience with the solid masonry walls being very high has been that there's an echo introduced, and we'd like to avoid that at all possible.
And
But just to, yeah.
the materials we got talked about putting something on the masonry walls that would dull the sound.
You know, what I'm talking about is keeping that masonry component at a lower height like we have, and then having the decorative metal above it, and then introducing a mesh material on the decorative metal. And that's what we've seen has successfully employed for a variety of reasons. You get sun attenuation, you get wind attenuation, you get transparency, and there's also a sound attenuation component. So that's the direction that we were moving in.
And what is the sound attenuation component for your mesh and your walls? How many decibels does it take it down?
We would have to study that further to do the precise decibel reduction.
So, I mean, it sounds like you haven't done any noise. Am I correct?
No,
that
we
you
know that
haven't
a
done any-
pickleball at the paddle itself, when the ball hits the paddle, it's 70 decibels. We also know that sound diminishes by a square root factor as you get distance from the pickleball. So we felt comfortable that we wouldn't have anywhere near even 70 decibels at the property line. It would be something very much less than that, which we can confirm. But it'll be well under that 65 to 70 decibel threshold that's allowable in the zoning.
55 from 6 to 7 and 10 to 11, correct?
Yeah. And if you want to put that as a condition on the of the approval, we can certainly make sure that we're 55 at the property line. Because remember, the courts on this design are set back significantly from the property line already, especially on the street frontages.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Thank you. And the matter is before the commission. And I'm going to take a stab at this and maybe get comments. I'm going to move approval, but I'm going to move it with an 8-foot masonry wall that's consistent and with hours from 7 a.m. to 10. So within the zoning, what we can do. And I think that there are times where the traffic might be lower, the sound will carry further. There's still concerns about sound and noise, and nothing that I've read indicates that they can keep that sound at the property line. So I think those would be the ways that I can support this, and I don't know if there's discussion on it or if there would be a second.
I might suggest on the wall that they consult with an acoustic engineer to come up with the best possible design. I think also, as you're driving down Ramon, to have an 8-foot solid wall is not necessarily the best look that we want to approve. I think there may be opportunities to do things at angles or, little slots here and there. I think that's why I think an acoustical engineer could help to better design this wall. And I think that would be my recommendation.
So that's not a second to what I said, but the other thing is that a heavy hedge actually helps a little. So for the landscape plan, my understanding is trees will not do any sound mitigation whatsoever. and most plantings don't, but a very heavy hedge, either inside or outside of the property, can do some sound mitigation. So that, and I think this is for discussion. I think we've got two possibilities laid out. There are three issues. The issues would be the hours. The issues are the wall. The 4 issues, the sound, referring it to a sound technician. And maybe there's more issues. Is this done? We've got that turn lane that hasn't been resolved, and we have the parking that hasn't been resolved. So possibly, one thought is sending this back for more study, resolving those issues, and also working with the sound engineer for the best way to do the wall as aesthetically as possible, but to do the best sound mitigation.
Also, on the hours of operation, I wonder if we can't, whatever we decide, maybe in a year time, come back
Yes.
and review that to see whether we can extend it or not, depending on how they resolve the sound issues.
Yes, Commissioner Miller?
Agree on all the concerns about sound and noise, for sure. I'm wondering if you're, Chair, if you're willing to see what the commission's feeling is about the bay parking.
Oh, absolutely.
I had a concern about that, but there's 24 spaces proposed as the bay parking. I personally dislike the bay parking, especially for new developments. I understand in lots of non-conforming old neighborhoods that it exists and is not going to go away. But here we have a brand-new project, and the bay parking is being proposed to allow them to get more courts on the property instead of parking. I'd rather see the bay parking gone and see the 10 or 12 parallel parking spaces on the curb utilized that would be removed with the bay parking. The bay parking is about 240 feet, and they can get about 10 or 12, horizontal cars parked there on the existing curb and gutter and keep the streetscape looking the way it does. And there's plenty of street parking in this area. I know we as a city have shied away from acknowledging street parking as an okay thing, but the fact is there's no reason why a resource like a super wide street can't be used for parking. The reason I bring that up is you'd have to increase the parking reduction from greater than 10%, and I don't know if that's even something that can be asked for.
I think we'd have two, and I agree with what you just said. So in terms of taking advantage of the street parking, it is something as a matter of policy we're trying to move towards more in the city bureaucracy. But 5 is the threshold at which I approve, and 6 becomes the threshold at which the Planning Commission would have to issue a variance with more stringent findings. That said, what we could consider, if the Planning Commission so directs us to, is a parking-specific plan, which is a land use permit approved administratively, where we could account for those surrounding off-street or on-street parking spaces and count them towards their parking calculations to give them some additional relief.
Just as a comment, I'm completely sympathetic to that. I think it's much better planning, and I agreed with what you were saying about the bay parking. When you were saying it, because every time I've seen it in the city since I've been here, it's been on older reuses. So if we can do it with some kind of parking plan, I would be happy to include that in a motion. And I think it's good that we do it, and I think I tend to think we need to see the parking changes on the curb. Coming in without that being resolved is hard. Yeah, Commissioner Murphy.
Are you suggesting we can do that as part of a condition and then without having the applicant come back to us, not a continuation?
I'm not sure on that. I mean, we could require everything be done before it goes to ARC, but it may be enough that we need to bring it back.
I'd like to, if we can, see this finished tonight and not do a continuation, if possible. I mean, I'm not hearing anything so far that would prompt us to not make a decision on the project tonight. Nothing I've heard so far from my perspective.
Except consulting a sound engineer and having a plan on that. I think that could take time.
I personally think that it needs a little bit more study. First of all, I understand the absolute need in the community for more pickleball. There's an insatiable appetite for it. But secondly, I also understand the need to make this a good neighbor to the surrounding uses. And I think that the most significant feature of this whole project for the rest of the community is going to be the walls, because they're what is outward facing. And I've heard everything from solid 8-foot high or 10-foot high to something with more acoustic nuance and architectural treatment. And although we could more or less dictate it, I hate to ask the applicant to buy into it tonight, because that's whatever is done, the things that we're talking about are big dollar impacts to their investment. And I think they need to make sure that they're comfortable and with the design and the cost of that before they commit. So my suggestion would be to check with the applicant and see that they're okay with the additional 2 weeks worth of study before we impose that. But personally, I'd like to see more thought translated into drawings for the parking, the pork chop, the circulation, the wall conditions.
And the shading,
And the shading,
and where
yeah.
they can do it, where they can do shading. We know it's only going to get hotter in the summertime.
Can I ask a clarifying question just about the hours of operation? If the commission's direction tonight is to continue this and study it through an acoustic engineer, do you want to allow them the opportunity to study the 6 to 7 and 10 to 11? Because I think a comment was raised earlier about our summer heat in particular, and there may be benefits to 6 to 7 if we have the evidence that shows that it can meet the noise ordinance. And so I don't know if that's something the commission wants to entertain if this comes back, is if they can demonstrate to you all that it can comply, if that's something you're willing to consider. Just something I wanted to seek clarification on.
I'm still concerned about those hours just for peaceful sleep for people who are adjacent. I wouldn't be concerned for the lots next to it, but in case that the noise impacts are more than being projected, I'm really concerned about, because I know our noise ordinance doesn't cover unusual circumstances like the heaviness of the paddle and the kind of sound the ball makes. So I don't know how other people feel about it. I understand that those might be the best hours to play. It's just the sound issue is critical for me for those.
My concern would be to make a decision on it without knowing if it violates our regulatory framework. So I don't know that we have the nexus unless they come back with a study that says it's going to exceed the noise ordinance, I think is the point I'm raising.
Okay.
I'm actually, given the distance between the end of the proposed sports complex and the across Ramon into the housing area, which is the only residential area that we're, I think, dealing with, that's a pretty long distance. And so I'm actually comfortable with.
And I'm not comfortable with 200
Okay, I understand,
feet.
but I'm comfortable with the noise, with the wall, the mitigation of the noise with the walls that we're proposing, and that the distance is farther away than what we have at Demuth. And Demuth is operating, as far as I know, without a great deal of complaints. So that's what gives me comfort that the noise factor is going to be
It would be good if we
managed.
got an answer as to whether there were complaints. We don't know. We didn't get a definitive answer from staff. I don't think they looked at it for this, did you?
I'm not aware of a high volume of complaints. It's certainly something that we can look into,
And it would be good to know what time Demuth starts.
and I was just wondering the same thing.
Director Hadwin, as I understand, the nearest residences are legal non-conforming. And are those closer than the 295 feet?
Yes, I think when I looked earlier, they were closer to 200 feet.
Okay. Are we not obligated to protect them? They're legal
This
non-conforming.
is where it's a difficult conversation, because I don't want to appear to be dismissive to real life impacts that may occur on users. But we are all bound by the rules that the city has set in our noise element and our noise ordinance. And the noise ordinance applies a different standard of acceptable noise limit to those uses by virtue of them being non-conforming in a non-residential zoning category. So because of that, you have to, as the commission, draw a nexus from your decision-making to the city's regulatory framework. And so I think the point we're raising is, despite them physically being there and hearing the noise, they are held to a different standard than a house 1 block south in the actual residential zone will be. And so that's the regulatory framework we're unfortunately living in. So it's an uncomfortable position, but that's, I think, the point I'm making. Does that make sense? Even if it doesn't make sense?
No,
I don't like it, but it makes sense. So we would have to ask the applicant if they would be willing to do it. We can't impose it as a condition.
I think without having technical information that suggests it's a problem, we're kind of in a difficult position with all of what's being discussed tonight, because we don't know, for example, that from 6 to 7 a.m. it's not compliant with the noise ordinance. So we're making assumptions without a complete amount of information and imposing conditions that may or may not be necessary. And so I do think my recommendation would be to continue this, allow a little bit of additional study, and allow the applicant to, in your words, I think you put it very well, determine what's feasible for them in light of actual technical information that can then inform you in your decision-making.
Quickly, I just did a quick internet search, and there is this material called accusing noise fence curtains that are supposed to reduce pickleball noise by 50%. I would suggest that you guys look, it's ACOUSTI fence, noise curtains.
Just
I think
Google
the point I'm making is
pickleball noise curtain.
they could do that work and find this product, and it could be that the noise is attenuated within 50 feet of the property. We don't know that answer yet. And then
I think that's what we need we need a little time to do. I mean, it's hard to think of imposing conditions if we don't have better answers, and they haven't brought, I mean, we have some room as to what we can do. And we also have some other problems with the property, which is the parking. So there are issues that, from my point of view, would merit extending this and having it come back a date certain. Commissioner Morrow?
No, I just wanted to say, if we're going to extend it, I'd like to get some input from Parks Department, because they're doing studies now, I think, to build more pickleball in the city, or there were some studies, and they have people that are subject matter experts on pickleball.
We have the
wonder if
former
we could reach
director.
out to somebody there. Maybe not, maybe, yeah.
We do have the former director sitting
Right.
sitting on the dais.
Maybe not, I don't know. It's
I
just-
don't know what level of technical study they've done on
Yeah.
these specific issues, but we're certainly happy to talk to them
Yeah.
and learn from their experiences.
Yes, Commissioner Miller.
Yeah,
Your
I
hand
just-
has been up for a long
I
time.
just want to say, in relation, I understand the noise ordinance is nuanced in relation to residential zoning line and such, but I want to remind the commission that our criteria is a little less nuanced. And so if there is teeth in these criteria if we determine there to be a need for something, irregardless of what the noise ordinance says for limitations, we can attempt to impose things.
So I'm going to take my motion back. I'm no longer making a motion to approve with conditions. My motion would be to ask this to come back on a date certain. The date certain would be 2 weeks. Is that what?
It's not going to be enough time.
That's not enough time.
It's not going to be enough time.
Because it's a development permit, I think it's okay to do a date uncertain. We don't have public
Oh, we
hearing
don't
notice
have to- we don't
requirements.
have to notice it.
And that
So-
way we have some
So
scheduled
do-
vacations and they may want some
Do
time
it
to
to a
regroup.
date uncertain. The things that we would like changed in the site plan have to do with both of the parking issues and a resolution on the turn issue, so that those are resolved in the site plan. We would like the applicant to do more, to do some acoustical studies on the material that they're proposing versus a 8-foot sound wall, and to come back to us with technical information, and also come back, if they can, on what the noise would be when you're in a more restricted time period according to the noise ordinance, and that would be the hours of 6 to 7 and 10 to 11. And I'll just throw in a question. They said that children are welcome into this facility, but their alcohol is just going to be pay and grab. And I would like them to resolve that, because if there's no monitoring of I don't know if, just to let us know, I mean, it seems strange that you can do a pay and grab for alcohol, but you can still have children in the facility.
I think that that's an issue for ABC to resolve. It's not really
Okay,
something we would
it's not
address through a
ours.
development permit. Yeah, it's not a use-based decision.
And possibly to look at, I mean, for them to look more at the shade issue. I would like them, if they're coming back, to refine their landscape plan and look at the possibility of helping with some heavier hedges as well. And I don't think that we would consider the trees mitigation. Obviously, their noise consultant can take a look at that as well. Is that a motion that people could second?
The part I'm uncomfortable with is the commission indicating to the applicant that they need to install shade structures. It is a commercial
No,
business.
I'm just asking them to look. We have the ability to approve the site plan. And shade may be involved in that site plan. I'm not sure if it can be or isn't.
It typically falls more clearly into the findings that will be related to the architectural study of this. So I think it's fair to ask the applicant to look at it further, but I do think it would be when this comes back to you, and if you were to move it forward, to make a request to the ARC to look at it even further as well.
I think that, and so asking the applicant to take a look at that is what we were doing. We will be doing.
But we're not requiring them to install shade structures over one or more courts.
We're asking them to take a look at it, and we can ask the Architectural Review Committee if we think it still would be beneficial to take a look at that issue, because that's in their purview.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments, or should we just call the question? Call the question.
Chair Wormick,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Alayan,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
No.
Commissioner Rotman.
Yes.
And Commissioner Morrell.
Yes.
Motion passes. Just as a summary, I think we love the idea of the value of an additional sports court and having additional pickleball for our residents. And we're very hopeful that this is the best site, this is a great site for it. We're not,
Don't be discouraged because you heard a lot of feedback. This is the best site in the city for it. It's
it
a
is.
good location. It just needs tweaking to make it perfect.
The vote's done.
Okay, Planning Commission reports, requests, and comments. Any?
Thank you for turning on the air conditioning.
Going straight from that to Planning Director's report.
A reminder that we have our joint session with the City Council and the city's boards and commissions next week at the Convention Center beginning at 5:30, I believe. So Kathy will be giving a presentation on behalf of the Planning Commission. It's very brief, but it's going to highlight our accomplishments in the last year. So I know we're all looking forward to that. We also, in wrapping up our contract with PlaceWorks, who did our general plan update, they have rolled out a new general plan website, which is embedded in the planning department's website on the city's website, which is much more user-friendly and we're excited about. So they've organized all of the various elements of the general plan in a nice, easy to understand way. And there's actually even an interactive map where you can zoom in and out, it's GIS based on your property to see your general plan designation. So we're moving into the 20th century in terms of planning here in Palm Springs, and we're very excited about that. We have goals to do something similar with the zoning code once that update is done. So ideally, we'll have a lot more publicly available information on our website, and so we're excited about that.
Where
So-
are we with the zoning code update?
Right, so we had the draft maps, which were the subject of our last round of outreach, and so since then, we've been making refinements. I think I had mentioned to you all, and certainly at the open houses, that the draft maps that the consultant produced were really just kind of a one-for-one translation of the current zoning into the new zoning categories that we are proposing, with some minor changes based on state law. The state law that we had talked about in terms of allowing higher density uses along our high-frequency transit corridors, which I know people want to debate that definition, but it's the definition given to us by the state, which allows 3 to 5 story buildings in a lot of locations adjacent to transit stations, transit stops in the city. So we made some changes there. So all of that to say what we've been doing since is actually going through the map and making changes based on sort of more about what we know about areas and where we want to promote growth to meet RENA allocations and some of the commitments we made in the housing element in order to sort of protect our more established neighborhoods. So we've been doing that level of refinement and just kind of working through some of the comments that we received through public feedback. We are getting into the drafting of the development standards themselves, and so that will likely be the focus of the next round of outreach to come in the fall. So things are progressing. There's also ongoing meetings with the urban design subcommittee who are looking at the non-residential urban design guidelines and ongoing conversations with the historics sub-consultants around changes, updates that will be made to the historic preservation ordinance. So a lot of work kind of going on behind the scenes. We're kind of hoping for a quieter summer, obviously not doing a lot of engagement over the summer, but that work is ongoing. So you'll see more presence in the fall.
And one thing that in Planning Commission reports is Commissioner Morrell was representing us on a subcommittee having to do with marijuana, and I'm wondering what your experience was there and how that came out.
The meeting seemed positive. They did present some revised drawings that reflected some of the comments we gave them, not not all the comments we gave them. And the chairman of the Architectural Review Committee meeting was there as well, so he gave his input. And some of the things were, we still didn't seem to reach agreement on the vaulted ceilings and the changes in ceiling height. That still seemed to be an open issue when we left. Anyway, Ken did say that he's going to be releasing revised plans in the next few days with his resolution and recommendations. But that basically they still hadn't really conformed to the Miralon design guidelines.
So I think the report is in production to go to the ARC at this point. You know, we have a limit to the number of meetings we can have and how quickly we need to move residential projects through, but it's going with a detailed summary of the Planning Commission's discussion, the subcommittee's discussion, and, you know, sort of a line-by-line review of the requirements and some suggestions on how to get it to compliance for the ARC to review.
You mentioned to me today that you're changing your process to some extent in terms of how you're writing ARC staff reports.
Yeah, I think it's more about standardizing it. So I think different planners have done it in different ways, and we've done different ways of highlighting the kinds of issues that are discussed in this meeting and passing those on to the Architectural Review Committee. So we're trying to just standardize that across all of the planners, but effectively, it's similar to what we do with your reports. After the summary, there will be sort of an issues and concerns section, and that's where we'll be highlighting these types of issues and clarifying the Planning Commission has requested that ARC review X, Y, and Z, or staff have these concerns and these recommendations. So we're trying to front load the report with that information. I don't have any other updates from me.
I have one question for Megan, which is, does her microphone light up when she wants to talk so that I can see it? It does. Okay, so I have a way, but if I miss it and you want to speak, just wave. With that, I will adjourn the meeting until 5:30 Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. Wishing everybody a happy 2 weeks of June.